Hi, this is Stuart Weinstein from Legal Talk, and thank you for being with us here today. Well, every profession has them, and those are the regulators. The good, bad, and ugly, and in Canada, in Ontario, in the US. Today's episode, and this is a blueprint episode for other regulators, is the Law Society of Upper Canada. When you think of the Law Society of Upper Canada, do you think of this? Or do you think of this?
Of the Holy Cross of our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with the Father and the Holy Spirit. Damien!
That's what we're going to be discussing today when we talk about the Law Society of Upper Canada. Today we have three distinguished, prestigious guests at the top of their field, all three lawyers. We have on my left, David A. Seed. We have Bill Gilmour, and to my right is Neil Perrier. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. David, can we start with you, a bit about yourself and your perspectives of good, bad, or ugly with the Law Society, where you rank them?
I've been practicing for about 18 or 19 years. I have, in more recent years, found myself dealing with discipline matters with the Law Society on behalf of members. I would say my views of the Law Society are that once they're on your case, it's a heavy burden to bear, and it is something that is practiced and soul-destroying for lawyers. And I think lawyers make the mistake when they're involved with a Law Society of believing they can represent themselves because they know something about law and because they have legal training. And a fundamental problem that they have when they appear before them is a complete mismatch when they find themselves before a discipline matter.
And Bill Gilmour?
I too practice law. I've been practicing for 25 years. I practice in Alberta, Ontario, and England and Wales. And as David, I've found myself appearing before the Law Society on a number of discipline matters over the past few years. I echo David's comments of the fear that lawyers feel whenever they've been called before the Law Society to answer to any conduct. And I echo his position also that nobody should be there unrepresented or represented by themselves.
And Neil Perrier, your thoughts, please, and about yourself.
I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for approximately 22 years. The main focus of my practice is professional regulation. I've acted on behalf of regulators and defendant professionals, including lawyers, doctors, engineers, other healthcare professionals. The Law Society is there to act in the public interest. I agree with both the gentlemen who spoke before me that when they undertake a prosecution, they do so with vigor. You should never be self-represented before the Law Society. The discipline counsel are very good at their jobs. They know what they're doing, and it's a very difficult process to find your own way out of.
In terms of that. In terms of, now starting with you, let's talk about transparency. Do you feel that regulators, like the Law Society of Canada, Upper Canada, is transparent? Do people know what's happening inside in terms of the fact that they're not on the sunshine list and we don't know the amounts that they're making? Or is there any other things that need to be more transparent?
Well, you have to be careful with that because their investigations cannot be transparent. Lawyers who are under investigation, it shouldn't be known to the public that they're under investigation until charges are laid. Their discipline process, once charges are laid by way of a notice of application, it is a transparent process. The hearings are held in public for the most part, unless there's reason to do otherwise. And their report, once charges are laid, they have a Stinchcomb-like disclosure obligation, and they, for the most part, fulfill that. So the process itself, the discipline process, is transparent.
Mr. Gilmour, your thoughts about transparency at the Law Society of Canada?
I would agree that by and large the discipline process is transparent. When Mr. Perrier talks about the Stinchcombe-like requirement for disclosure, it is somewhat modified at the Law Society because of client confidentiality, and the Law Society seems to have a strong preoccupation with not giving any information out of other members and other lawyers' files to lawyers who are facing discipline charges. And to that extent, sometimes it's difficult to make a full and proper answer in defense because defense counsel doesn't get all of the information that's required to fully inform the defense. And again, that's a debatable question because a great deal of it falls under the very legitimate concern that information that shouldn't be given to other people isn't given to lawyers just because they're defending another lawyer.
David? Oh, Mr.
The law, however, is that they need to disclose all relevant information which is relevant to the charges laid in the defense of the lawyer. If you dig, you will get it from the Law Society, and if you don't, you can bring a motion, and you're certainly entitled to it at law, in my view.
David?
In my experience, counsel for the Society is more generous with their disclosure obligations than most opposing counsel, Crown counsel, other lawyers and other proceedings. They almost go overboard. But I think that's the nature of the discipline counsel. The decisions, the internal decisions, and the instructions given to those counsel, the discipline counsel, I don't always find quite as clear as the disclosure of counsel themselves. I think the decisions, which lawyers are going to aim their sights at, why they do it, what other motivations the society may have to go after certain members, I don't think is always clear. It's not always apparent to me representing lawyers why they're so high on the list and why others have been passed over.
And now in talking about the customer service, so Bill, we'll start with you. In terms of the concept of the customer service when you've dealt with the Law Society, how would you rate that? Good, bad, ugly?
I'd rate it as good. I think they're cooperative, they're forthcoming, and they're responsive to questions and concerns that are asked. You might not always like the response, but I think they're always forthcoming.
And David?
I don't have any complaints about their customer service. I've been involved as well with them with their on the education side and assisting them on the licensing. And I find them, if not congenial, outrightly pleasant, more than congenial, I guess. And a very comfortable place if they want you to come in and assist, putting together something for them for internal use. Excellent people to deal with.
And Neil?
I agree. The administrative branch is different from the disciplinary branch, but for customer service, as far as knowing what fees you have to pay, what documents you have to file, they're a very efficiently run organization, and I think they serve the profession well.
And in terms of the government, do you think the government's afraid of them, or the government regulates them as much as they need to with other regulators? Like if you were the government, if you're the Attorney General, and you had the chance to make changes to the Law Society, Neil, David, start with you. What do you think you would change?
If I were the Attorney General?
Yes, and you had carte blanche to go in there and make some of the changes that need to be changed. What would you change?
I'd like to hear Neil's first.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously, we're talking about doing amendments to the Law Society Act. The provision of the Law Society Act, or provisions of the Law Society Act, that I find most tilt the scales on disciplinary hearings are the cost provision. Under the Law Society Act, the Law Society is entitled to costs if it's successful in a prosecution of a lawyer, and they regularly seek those costs. If a lawyer is successful in defending himself or herself, they're, for the most part, not entitled to costs from the Law Society. The test for costs is very high. The reason for that, or the reason that's been articulated, is it's a civil proceeding and not a criminal proceeding, and so costs, the Law Society should be entitled to obtain costs. If that's the case, then in my view, lawyers should also be entitled to obtain costs if they're successful in the defense of their action, because they need to be involved in that action. Their careers are at stake. And quite frankly, the stakes are a lot higher in certain circumstances than those of a career criminal who may otherwise be residing mostly in prison. The lawyers' livelihoods are at stake and livelihoods of others are. If I could think of a provision that needed amending, it's that, but I don't hold up much hope that it ever will be amended. Similar provisions are in respect of other regulatory bodies, College of Physicians and Surgeons under the Regulated Health Professions Act, professional engineers. But it makes the playing field rather unfair, in my view.
Mr. Gilmour?
I would echo that. That's the top on the shopping list of things that should be changed, and that is the availability of cost to somebody who successfully defends an action in a disciplinary proceeding. The Law Society very aggressively defends the turf that these are civil proceedings and civil in nature. The criminal rules don't apply, and there's all kinds of reasons why they prefer to have it staked out that way. But it's quite an unfair playing field, in my view, that you stake this out as a civil proceeding and then you don't make the availability of costs bilateral. Another issue that that occurs to me is could use some work, and I'm not sure how it could best be approached, but hearings are held by benchers, and benchers do a great job at hearings. However, they're hard to assemble, they're hard to find. They all have other lives, other careers, other things going on, and that delays the time in delivering of decisions. And it occurs to me that there's a particular skill set that's not common to everybody in hearing evidence and making decisions. It's quite different than marshalling cases. And an assembled group of, shall we say, designated and professional compensated decision makers, as opposed to choosing from a pool of benchers that happen to be available, might be a very good thing to institute.
And Mr. Seed?
Well, to follow up on the points of the last two guests, a person who finds himself, herself being prosecuted by the society finds themselves in answering a case that the society may have spent 3 or 4 or 5 years putting together or assembling. They may have had forensic accountants, they may have had expert witnesses who delivered fulsome reports. And once the matter is on, the society advances them very quickly to a hearing stage, and it is financially onerous to respond to a case. The disclosure that comes in a case, so the Law Society might come in 3 or 4 bankers' boxes that the Law Society has had years to put together, and it is an expensive undertaking to defend. In cases of mortgage fraud, for example, the society may choose to advance their case, sometimes without direct evidence, but by making indirect inferences. So these cases are complicated, and the defense is complicated. And I agree with counsel that it can be a practice-destroying exercise to defend against, with no upside if you're successful.
Would you consider the Law Society of Upper Canada sort of the regulator of regulators? Because, for example, in Ontario, there's 40 regulators. So if you're brought upon any of the other, you don't hire a dietitian if you're an architect and you're being prosecuted. You hire a lawyer. So would you consider sort of the Law Society above the law, the regulator of regulators, untouchable, or are they doing their job that the public needs?
Well, I think the Law Society is a general principle is doing the job that the public needs, because it's a self-regulatory profession. If we didn't have self-regulation, we'd be regulated by the government, and I would predict that that wouldn't be a better predicament for lawyers to be in. Having said that, I think the Law Society does as good a job as any other of the major regulators in Ontario. The only real difference is when you're before other regulatory bodies, such as the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, the committee itself has independent legal counsel to guide it on legal arguments. At the Law Society, that's deemed unnecessary because it's lawyers, for the most part, and public members who sit on the panels. I think with respect to what the Law Society has traditionally regulated, it does an excellent job on the matters it's traditionally regulated. It's now more and more seeking to regulate civility and conduct, and I'm not so sure where that's going to go, but that will be interesting to watch over the next couple of years.
Mr. Seed?
My sense of how the Law Society governs compared to others is I do think they are susceptible to outside influences. I give again the example of mortgage cases. My suspicion is that there's been high-level discussions between banks or perhaps government and senior people of the Law Society about whether or not mortgage work might be taken away from lawyers if they don't do a better job of going after lawyers. To that extent, where they suspect there's mortgage fraud, they are exceedingly vigilant and exceedingly aggressive in their prosecutions. And compared to other professions, in that regard, I think more aggressive. There's many other quacks and people practicing in certain regulated health professions that seem to get skate away from many of the problems that they create better than lawyers do when they find themselves within the subject of a complaint.
And Mr. Gilmour?
I've heard the allegations and the stories about the motivation for pursuing mortgage fraud as vigorously as it is. There's certainly a public interest in pursuing mortgage fraud, but I would have to say that, and I can't base this on any empirical evidence, but I'd have to say that my feeling is that there is something going on there to motivate this beyond absolutely rational means, and I'm not sure what the relationship is between lenders and banks and mortgage professionals such as brokers and real estate brokers, but there's certainly in my view a much enhanced aggressiveness towards mortgage issues that goes beyond rational analysis that you would find, for instance, in a criminal court or in a civil court.
The only rational analysis that I could offer up is it's not unlike misappropriations. Clients have to fundamentally trust lawyers to be forthright with them regarding mortgage transactions and any fees that may come in and out of their trust accounts. And without that fundamental trust, the profession itself would be in trouble. So in that sense, I don't know if there's been any outside pressure or not, but in that sense I can understand why the Law Society would move very vigorously on mortgage fraud issues, just as it does on misappropriation and misapplication of trust funds.
Now, this is a blueprint episode in respect to future things that we're going to be doing for the Law Society in terms of investigations and other regulators. As a wrap-up, what is your feeling as to where the Law Society is going to be going in, say, 2012? Will the government come in and take over? Will it continue to operate as it is? Will it get stronger? So where do you see the Law Society going in 2012? Or will there maybe not be a Law Society and come January 1st, 2013, the Law Society of Upper Canada no longer exists?
There'll be a Law Society for the next 100 years and farther into the future. Law Society is over 100 years old. There's always been self-regulation. I don't think the government has any interest in wanting to regulate the legal profession. It's effectively regulated by its regulatory body, in other words, by itself. Nor do I think the government should regulate the legal profession. I think that would be a dangerous precedent to the independence of the bar.
Mr. Gilmour?
I agree. The Law Society will be there for hundreds of years to come. It has to be, and the last thing that we ever want to see is the government regulating lawyers, for indeed lawyers are the only defense between the public and the power of the state. That barrier has to be there at all times. I think over the next year, the Law Society will continue much as it has. There may be some minor tinkering and there may be some improvements, but it's going to go much as it has.
And Mr. Seed?
Yeah, I would echo what the other speakers have said and add to it, being a bencher is a prestigious position within the profession, and becoming a bencher is part of the career trajectory of a lot of people who have higher ambitions, and taking away the Law Society and that administrative involvement of the profession would be very vigorously fought by members of the profession, if only people who have those sort of political ambitions.
Well, this is Stuart Weinstein from Legal Talk. We've had three distinguished guests today, David Seed, Bill Gilmour, and Neil Perrier, who are very familiar with the Law Society. This is a blueprint episode, so we're going to be doing more information on regulators in Canada and Ontario in the States, how they operate, where they need to go from here. You'll be able to reach any of these gentlemen through Legal Talk, 416-224-0200, as well as their individual information, legalall.info, as well as on Twitter, @legal. I'm Stuart Weinstein. In terms of building on viewership, investors, sponsors, and advertisers, we look forward to bringing you other innovative and topics of discussion that no one else talks about. Coming up next, we're going to be talking with Noel Biederman, who is the president of Ashley Madison, and we'll be discussing how he's creating jobs in a new industry, and when you have an unemployment epidemic, where things are going from here. I'm Stuart Weinstein, and this is Legal Talk. This is Stuart Weinstein from Legal Talk. When you're looking to have an affair, do you look at the company, are they classy, or are they creating jobs? Well, today we're going to find out. We're here today with Noel Biederman, who's the president of Ashley Madison, one of the foremost classy shops to have an affair. To talk to you about how to have an affair with class, as opposed to unclassy affairs. Noel, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Stuart.
Can you tell me a bit about yourself and about Ashley Madison?
Sure. So I'm a former sports attorney turned, I suppose, the king of infidelity, right? We are now helping 13 million people around the globe pursue what would make them happy, which at this time and place is an affair.
So the Law Society of Upper Canada will be very proud of you.
Well, they should be. They truthfully should be proud of a serial entrepreneur that's employing hundreds of Canadians, exporting a product around the globe, bringing millions of dollars to an economy. The number of lawyers I engage is extraordinary. So yeah, I think they should be proud of it, despite the notion that somehow I'm in a tainted business. I think that's for people to judge themselves. I think that's a harsh categorization.
Let's show one of the commercials that you use to promote Ashley Madison.
Jackie, is everything all right?
No. I just found out my husband's cheating on me.
Welcome to the club.
Isn't it time for AshleyMadison.com?
Yeah, as you know, because we're on the internet, we had to show one of your more tame commercials. When do you think you're going to get a bit more racy?
Yeah. Truthfully, we got, I think, more pushback at the fact that we had a capybara in that ad than that Savannah Sampson took her shirt off, but yeah.
I mean, to me and to people, the viewers watching, everybody, like, they talk about sort of the adults in the bedrooms. People pretty much have to have their own choice. I want to talk about other things, but I mean, one of the things that no one ever really asks you, or maybe they do, the amount of jobs you're creating. Are you creating real jobs with benefits? Are people actually, like, can they come in and be working full-time and be making a salary working for your company?
You know, Ashley Madison employs 125 people in Yonge and Eglinton and, the city of Toronto. It's not cheap rent. We probably pay on a pay scale for our developers, our customer care, way above everybody else. We're a very intimate group, and so that's part of how we attract talent to this company. We are trying to do something unique. We are trying to export a digital product. Canada is much more well known for an importation, right? An importation mentality of eBay Canada, Facebook Canada, Yahoo Canada, very little innovation when it comes to digital economy. We don't have our own Silicon Valley. And so Avid Life Media, our parent company, Ashley Madison in particular, is unique in that we're taking this product around the globe, and I think it's something we should all be proud of, and most importantly, like I said, it's a source for employing Canadians.
Now, in terms of, you look at the whole aspect of companies, real companies, if I was a customer and I had a problem with getting poor customer service, do you have an internal discipline problem? Like any other company, if an employee is not meeting your standards, do you have a way of disciplining, or is it just this whole concept of, well, you're in an infidelity market, anyone there can do what they want and treat people like garbage?
No, I think we probably take the exact opposite approach. We already know that our customers are in a highly sensitive place and time in their lives, and so we put people through a real screening process before we employ them, and we explain to them that, hey, you're going to be working in something that's very sensitive and unique, and we train them to the nth degree, so they know how to handle those customers. And if for whatever reason we deal with an internal employee issue, if they're not cutting the mustard for whatever reason, we have strict probationary periods. We'll move them out of the group. We'll try and better inform them, educate them, get them prepared. But ultimately, if they can't service our customers, they can't be a part of our company.
When you look at some of the other things that Ashley Madison is looking to do, what are some of the up-and-coming 2012 sites or projects that you're developing, and what do you do now besides Ashley Madison out there in the marketplace?
We're constantly expanding. We're looking at where else this behavior pattern is underserviced or doesn't, have the benefits of an Ashley Madison type service. And so that could be markets in Asia, that could be opportunities out of India. We're looking at all those kinds of continued expansion. And I think also what we've come to learn with Ashley Madison is that the road less traveled is actually traveled quite often. And so if traditional companies, if the legal advice they get is, oh, don't venture there, that's risky, we're happy to venture there. We think as long as you're doing something that is legal, even if it is controversial, we have a lot of appetite for that. And so whether it's building a same-sex site of Man Crunch, or whether it's building a service for older women who want to date younger men called CougarLife.com, we're happy to venture into those places. And we'll worry about the potential obstacles to marketing those services as they come.
Let's talk about why does traditional media sort of the first thing they ask you is how dare you this or how dare you that, as opposed to looking at the contributions that you're making to our society?
I think there's a narrative out there, it's an unfortunate narrative that kind of says you have to live your life this way, right? And this is the only way you should be doing it. It seems to be, intuitively false, right? For anybody who's got any sort of modicum of intelligence, we always look over our shoulder and say, wow, we were really being intolerant. That was a lot of ignorance we did and practiced long before. And so there's no doubt that there's been an evolution around a desensitization around premarital sex and same-sex relationships. And so right now, monogamy is kind of going through this change, and people are having trouble digesting the fact that the majority of relationships have monogamy attached to them, and whether it's presidents or athletes or entertainers or your friend, we tend to want to judge these people without really walking a minute in their shoes, and so we should probably stop doing that.
Are there times of the year where you find that you're having more customers, or do you have a consistent amount? Yeah,
people want to blame Ashley Madison for infidelity, right? As if I could do that, as if I could sit down with you today and say, oh, Stuart, you're married, you know what? I'm going to convince you to have an affair. That's ridiculous. Nobody's that pliable. They're definitely not going to be persuaded to have an affair with a 30-second TV commercial, right? Let alone a one-to-one conversation. And so my role in the affair, if you will, is to cannibalize the behavior, is to say to people, if you've decided to do that, don't pursue it in the workplace. That's where it's going to end badly. You're going to end up risking your job. Don't do it on a singles dating site with an unsuspecting single person. That could lead to them believing there was some sort of tort that took place, like they were persuaded to do something under false pretenses. If you're going to have an affair, do it in this universe and do it where everybody knows what they're getting into.
What kind of charity work does Ashley Madison do, or any initiatives that you're going to be taking in the near future?
I think our focus is on sociology, right? The sociology of what is the reality of an affair. And so we have spent literally, probably at this point, hundreds of thousands of dollars on research that lets us better understand the true human behavior pattern out there. It might shock a lot of people that YouPorn today is going to get 10 times the traffic of the New York Times, but that's the reality. The reality is that more people are going to go to strip clubs today than are going to go see, plays on Broadway. That's the reality. And so we should start trying to spend time understanding causation. While I don't have a PhD, I've become a real-world doctorate of understanding infidelity because I'm able to look at infidelity at its genesis, as people self-publish who they are and why they're coming to our service. And I think that's really robust data. And so we're committed to constantly evolving that.
So in general, you're making it easier for people to have infidelity or an affair based on their decision that they've made. So what are some of the things that they would see on the site that make it easier for them? Are there things that they can do? Are there tips? Are there ways to make, because any experience, like when you're purchasing, how do you make them feel comfortable about that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things when we were creating Ashley Madison is we viewed an affair as having two critical components: meeting someone and not getting caught. That's why people tend to pursue an affair. And so we were very focused in particular on part two, the digital lipstick that people left behind, a text message, a voice message, how do we mitigate that? And so we created a credit-based system that allows you to communicate with other members with no ongoing costs. We created things like a panic button, a way to delete not just your account, but the messages you've sent to other people, the ability to mask or privately label your photograph so it's only released one-to-one versus the whole community. And then critically, we didn't bill you under Ashley Madison, right? We found a way to make sure that any kind of trace of this would be as invisible as you were intelligently going to pursue. If you go and leave your computer open, your iPhone app open or whatever, sure, then your partner might find out about it. But if you really approached it from an intelligence standpoint, there was a great chance you wouldn't get caught.
Well, in today's society of being more aware as to who your partner is, I know that this whole stigma that you go into a drugstore and everyone would stare at you when you ask for condoms, but now people see condoms as being the right thing to do. So it sounds like the whole industry, I mean, if you look at, and forgive me, it's either San Bernardino or San Fernando, which is the porn capital.
San Fernando, yeah.
San Fernando. But once again, they have high standards. So where does Ashley Madison fall into high standards for, say, the industry in a whole? And where would you put yourself as being a leader? Are there any competitors? Where would you place yourself?
Well, first and foremost, I think we invented the phrase married dating. Before Ashley Madison, I don't think anybody in the English language ever used that phrase.
Like Hanukkah, like Hanukkah bush.
We were trying to
we
were trying to describe the service in a succinct way, and that's how we ended up doing it. And I think now, are there millions of imposter sites out there? For sure, but the internet is really about, to a huge degree, monopolies. Monopolies that end up existing because people want something comprehensive. And so if I truly have a real competitor, it's Facebook. If we sat down with a number of divorce attorneys in Toronto, I think that they would tell you ad nauseum the amount of pleadings that regard to this Facebook happened here, there, whatever, probably a lot less around Ashley Madison because we're designed to be discreet. Facebook's designed for the exact opposite. It's to broadcast. And so that's the wrong place, the exact wrong place to pursue something like an affair. And I think from our corporate perspective, not only are we innovative on the product side and on our marketing side, I think to the point where, a ton of companies would love to emulate what we do, but it's also just how we approach our customers, right? And I think that's just a critical lesson that a lot of internet organizations have learned. It's not easy to bring e-commerce online, and when you do, that customer is really valuable to you. You have to, no matter what their question, approach it as if it's the most intelligent question you ever heard.
So it sounds like you're making people more comfortable in terms of whole area infidelity. You're providing excellent customer service. Well, of course, money is always an issue when anybody thinks about any product or service. So how are you protecting my financial information when I'm going on your site and making a purchase?
That's a great question. Ultimately, that was an element of the business I didn't want to assume. I looked at it and said, listen, we do have hundreds of employees here. We're going to screen them to the nth degree, but the temptation might be there. There's 1,000,001 hackers out there. Why don't I just look to the organizations who all they do all day long is protect credit card data and work with credit card data. And so ultimately, I chose to outsource that partnership. And so I never even know who signs up to my service. It's anonymous to me. I never know the purchase history. I never see the credit card information, and I'm content with that.
And is there anything else you'd like the public to know about Ashley Madison, where you're going, what your thoughts are, and other products and services that they should look up for you?
I think in the end, love it or hate it, you have to come to believe that affairs would happen whether we were here or not. And so is society not better off by aggregating this behavior pattern into a community of like-minded adults where everybody knows what they're getting into? I, for one, would argue that we definitely are. But I think the real way to look at this is that everyone's responsible in society for moving it forward into a healthier direction, and that's including our legislators or the legal minds behind it. That's our artists, but it's also our entrepreneurs. And so right now what I'm doing is maybe pushing boundaries, but it's good for our society. It's good for us to reevaluate. We do know we have a cataclysmic problem on our hands. Couples get divorced more often than they stay together, and there is a real repercussion for divorce. It is something we're just learning to study because it's really only upon us for 1 or 2 generations, but children raised in single-parent households just have less opportunities. They do have more trouble with drugs and alcohol, legal issues, those kinds of things. And so ultimately, if we have a problem and a mushrooming problem, we have to get to the causation of it. And I think that's part of what I'm trying to contribute.
So it sounds like you're sort of trying to save marriages as well because people are more dynamic to discuss it.
I am positive that if you look at the data out there, couples in open relationships that have decentralized monogamy are more successful, at least if you define success as not divorcing, and I don't know that's a good way to define anything as not failing, but you know, those couples are more successful, and so we know we have a problem. We just don't know how to address it, and so I, as an entrepreneur from that direction, I'm trying to in my own little way.
Josh, is there any way of running the commercial one more time, or is that too sort of quick, sudden? Okay, we're going to run the commercial one more time, and then we'll come back and thank you. So here we go.
Jackie, is everything all right?
No. I just found out my husband's cheating on me.
Welcome to the club.
Isn't it time for ashleymadison.com?
Okay, well, thank you for that. You promised me you'll get me a more racy commercial next time we have you on.
For sure.
We prevail upon you to come on in a future episode. This is Stuart Weinstein. We had Noel Biederman from Ashley Madison, president of Ashley Madison, Man Crunch, and other prestigious products in the market. If you're looking to invest, advertise, sponsor, certainly as we build on the viewership, Legal Talk's your one-stop place for that. You can reach me on Twitter @legal, also legalall.info, and of course 416-224-0200. Of course, we're broadcasting live all over the world. I'm Stuart Weinstein. We'll be back in a moment with the wrap-up and the Oscars and who's going to be on ABC February 26th to discuss that. Stuart Weinstein, Legal Talk, thanks for joining us.